One of the beautiful things about being at SOM is you can do all of the tried and true MBA career pathing and in consulting or banking or whatever it might be. Even if you are in one of these less represented areas, the school's really good at working with that.
What should your school be known for academically that it isn't known for?
So instead of teaching by functionally discrete silos, teaching finance or marketing, we teach by stakeholder perspectives.
Over the years, there have been so many articles about like Saturday Night Live is over. And I think about that in the same way about the MBA sometimes. Like every couple of years, there's an article about the MBA being over.
Right. The firms always want SOM graduates on their teams because SOM graduates are the ones who can see the big picture.
The Silver Scholars program, Yale's deferred admissions program, is unique in that it enables exceptional college seniors to start their MBA immediately after graduating, rather than waiting to begin their studies like most other deferred programs. Yale Silver Scholars complete a first-year curriculum right away and then spend the next year in a full-time internship before returning to the SOM for their third year to finish the program. We'll be chatting about this program, plus career outcomes for Yale SOM graduates, and those industries where Yale has a significant presence. And we're very lucky to have with us today Bruce DelMonico and Laurel Grodman, Assistant Deans of Admission, here to share their experience with us. Thank you again for being here. As we've noted, we have a bit of a potpourri today, a grab bag of a bunch of different topics, still related, and of course related to business school. So let's start with the Silver Scholars program. Just give us the basics of it. You know, how big is the program? Are the averages the same as the normal program? Some basic facts around it.
Yeah, I can kick that off. Sure. Yeah. So Silver Scholars program is our early career program. It's meant for undergrads or also, people who might be in a one-year graduate program after undergrad to be able to keep the trajectory of their education going and enter business school immediately. So the way it's structured is you join your first year MBA course and go through the core curriculum immediately after graduating from school. Then you take a pause of 1 to 5 years to gain professional experience. And people really do take the whole gamut. Some take 1 year and do an internship or a series of internships. Others take a longer kind of period and really get immersed in a career path. And then whatever that period is, you come back at the end of it and you complete your final year of the MBA program, your elective courses. And it's really designed for people who are kind of ready to sustain the momentum of their undergrad experience. They're still in student mode, but they know why this makes sense for them. They know that they want to enter sort of an MBA kind of pathway, and they just want to hit the ground running. And so the program is probably more than 20 or 25 years old even at this point. It was one of the very first early career programs and still remains one of the only ones that you can enter immediately after undergrad versus having kind of a deferral period. So it's unique in that regard. And so the cohort these days is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 or so students per class, but there's no set number that could kind of grow or contract depending on the pool. And again, it tends to be people who have obviously not had professional experience. So when we talk about evaluating an MBA candidate's professional experience, we have to look at that slightly differently for a Silver Scholar candidate. And we're thinking about sort of different applied experiences. It could be internships, it could be part-time work that someone has done during their undergraduate studies, but it could also be extracurricular leadership, volunteer leadership, any number of things in which someone is engaging outside of their academic work. So we kind of expand that definition to get a sense of professional potential. But these tend to be extremely motivated, extremely high caliber candidates and are really kind of superstars on their respective campuses, doing really well academically, but also, again, showing that potential that a full-time and traditional MBA candidate would have had a little bit more runway to demonstrate.
Can you share any data with us? Is the Silver Scholars program more selective, as selective relative to the general pool? Numbers of how big is the class? What, are the GMAT or GRE averages higher or lower? Those types of things.
It's definitely more selective, just in that, while we don't have a set number of candidates that we're looking for, it's also not going to be 50 members of the class.
Right.
We're trying to keep it relatively small, and in part it's so that we could provide the necessary support for those students. There is a dedicated member of our career development team who works with our Silver Scholar candidates, so we want to be able to provide that high quality experience. So with that, it is more selective than sort of the general population, but it's just a different type of candidate, I think, who's attracted to that. In terms of academic stats, I'd say probably on the whole, this is a really strong academic cohort, in part because that's the main sort of momentum that they've got going heading into this. And again, we're using different parts of the application to get at professional potential, but that's a little bit more on spec versus, on the other side of that, we are looking for people who have done really well academically, are ready to apply that, to yet another degree consecutive to their undergrad. So probably on the whole, slightly stronger, academically.
Do you want to learn more about your target business schools? Check out On Track by mbaMission, where we have in-depth modules on all the top business schools, covering everything from what makes them unique to how to tackle the application essays and short answers, and so much more. You can also practice for interview and video questions, all done on your schedule, on demand. We appreciate your dedication to our podcast, and we want to offer you 30% off any On-Track subscription. Use the code MBAMPOD to get 30% off any On-Track subscription. Check it out at ontrack.mbaMission.com. I would imagine there's a premium on maturity. You've got people coming
For sure.
right out of college.
Yeah.
How do you gauge the maturity of an individual at that point in their lives?
That's a really good question. And how do you gauge it in the limited tools we have within the application process? So I guess a couple of things come to mind. The letters of recommendation, we actually ask for a slightly different kind of set from this population. We ask for one academic and one sort of professional or applied setting. So getting a sense from those recommenders, again, in those two different settings, can give us some perspective on how that person shows up in school and outside of school. So that, I'd say, is pretty important. We talked about the video questions a little bit earlier, again, not to impose more pressure on this than need be, but we are looking to get some sense of how someone articulates themselves on their feet, and do they carry themselves in a way that is, they don't need to be the parallel of a 30-year-old coming into the classroom, but is someone able to kind of hold their own? And thinking about the MBA classroom as a really interactive setting. And, cues throughout, as part of the experience of writing an essay, what thoughts are going on inside this candidate's head? What kind of experiences are they bringing to bear? We're adjusting. We understand that these are candidates who have not had full-time professional experience. We're not expecting the exact same thing, but we're still looking for someone who will be recruiting alongside our full-time MBA, direct applicants, and participating in that classroom. And so we're teasing it out. And actually, the one last thing I'll mention is it is a slightly different interview process. So our non-Silver Scholar applicants are by and large interviewed by second-year MBA students. All of these Silver Scholar interviews are conducted by members of the Silver Scholar Admissions Committee. It gives us an opportunity to standardize a little bit more, ask a little bit more kind of direct questions about how this really unique program fits into their career plans. And so we keep that a little bit more kind of guardrailed, I guess, if you will, for this population.
So if I join the Silver Scholars program, I go out there, I get an internship I absolutely love, my career takes off. Mm-hmm. There's a risk I don't come back. Is that an outcome that happens?
I don't think that's ever happened.
No.
Everyone comes back.
Well,
they sometimes, as Laura said, sometimes they, it's 1 to 5 years. Sometimes they take a little longer, but everybody eventually comes back.
Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing over the 20 plus years that this has been in existence.
Yeah. Wow.
I think maybe there's one person once years and years and years ago, but I'm not sure if that's even
it's definitely a rarity.
Yeah.
I think once people are in, they want to finish up that degree. And plus, being at part of the idea of the structure of this is that by the time you're entering your elective courses, you have had that professional experience, and you can tailor what you're studying from there with a little bit more of an informed perspective of what your interests are, what your gaps are. And so people are eager to come back to school and have the opportunity to do that before they're out in the real world again.
It sounds superficial, but I often say to applicants, the one thing you can't undervalue is that for most people, this is the last break they're going to take professionally in their lives. Like, it's very, very rare that you're going to get 2 years off. So I imagine if you've got, 1 year and then you've got, 2 or 3, 4 years of working hard, maybe you're looking for that last year. I guess the evidence.
Ready for that one more year. Before going back full time.
So there's a story emerging. It's being written up in the Wall Street Journal these days about the tough hiring environment on campus. Is this a story about MBAs being hyper selective or struggling to adapt to kind of changing industries, or is this just a tough across the board job market?
Yeah, I think, and obviously feel free to weigh in as well. But I think it might be a little bit of both. I think Yale MBAs have always been very choosy about where they wanted to end up and what kind of career and what kind of impact they wanted to have. I think that it has been a more challenging market this past year. The economy has been a little unsettled, especially for us and a lot of top business schools. Consulting was a major destination for graduates. Consulting and investment banking, consulting pulled back in terms of their hiring. So I think there was. So that piece of it, I think when you look at, I think there are a lot of very dire articles being written, and even when you look at the sort of the statistics that are reported in the placement, we talked to our career development office, and it's the thing they remind us that those are the numbers 3 months out, and there's so many people who that's not how many people get a job, it's get that job within that window, and so I think part of it is matching the opportunities to what our graduates want to do. This past year took a little longer than it has in the past, and they got there, but it took a little more work, it took a little more time, and I think that's probably what you're seeing.
It's funny, we're talking today around the time of Saturday Night Live's 50th anniversary, and over the years, there have been so many articles about, like, Saturday Night Live is over. And I think about that in the same way about the MBA sometimes. Like, every couple of years, there's an article about the MBA being over.
Right.
I'm like, it's highly unlikely to be over. There have been other tough times in the hiring world after the financial crisis, after the tech bust.
Right.
It happens every couple of years.
Yep. I don't know if you remember this. A number of years ago, I kicked off reader training with a series of headlines about, some of them were about the death of the MBA, and some of them were about the 1929 stock market crash. And it made the team guess which was which. And it was really, really tough. And we're still here. So.
Yeah, that's great. So have there been any nice growth areas that people have pivoted towards? I feel like there's increasing maybe healthcare hiring in certain schools and the like.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, I think consulting has been as high as 50% of our placement. That's kind of eased down. I think actually finance has come back. It was below 20% for a little bit. I think it's close to a quarter. So that's actually been an area, a little bit of growth. I think you're right, healthcare. I feel like sustainability has always been very, very strong and very popular. So I think that's one of the interesting things about being at Yale for specifically is, there's that strength in the more traditional areas that you see, but then there's that diversity when you look under the hood, the diversity of outcomes and people doing different things. Tech has been, I think, probably another area that's been a little more challenging, or if not challenging, it's been manifests itself differently. So it's not been as much of sort of Google, Microsoft, Apple as maybe some smaller, more nimble startups that have been the destinations for those going into tech.
I think something like tech, too, is one of these slippery areas. I mean, something like employment reports are helpful because it gives you something to grab onto, but so many companies sort of defy categorization. Yeah, I mean, who's in a job today that isn't a tech company in some way, shape, or form? I think it's not this sort of discrete entity. Even something like Amazon is technically retail, e-commerce, but obviously we would think of that as a tech company. So I think our students are doing a lot of sort of tech-oriented work, but you could be doing that in healthcare, or you could be doing that in, you could be working even in asset management, right? But with a highly kind of quant bent to it. And it's kind of...
And that's what I mean for candidates looking at the employment reports. Obviously, you want to look at both, we break them out by both industry and by function. So you can see where people are in terms of like the kinds of organizations, but then what they're doing. And that tracks but doesn't always match. I
guess what's sort of the inverse of that is that sometimes functionally things don't line up with industry. So you could be working in a finance job at Amazon. You'd be working M&A in the same way that, like, are you really working in tech that way? yes, you're working for maybe a tech company, maybe a consumer company, and you're working in kind of a typical M&A capacity.
Yeah.
What is there any? There's no like desired target or any desired like field that anyone that the school wants anyone to go into, right? It's all open season.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that again is kind of in the DNA of the school. When the school started, we had outcomes and people going into areas that looked nothing like what traditional MBA candidates were at the time. And I do think, one of the beautiful things about being at SOM is you can do all of the tried and true kind of MBA career pathing and in consulting or banking or whatever it might be. But it's always been a place that's been very used to working with students who want to do a wide variety of things. Like we have a long tail is sometimes what I like to say. So even if you are in one of these less represented areas, the school's really good at working with that. And it's one thing to line up and get the job from the company that comes to campus, which, by the way, looks different now than it even did 5 years ago. And there's so much virtual recruiting now, but, established kind of school relationships. So that's valuable. And obviously it's beneficial to be able to secure a job that way. But it's going to serve you all your life to figure out how to get the job that you want, even if it's not the one that 20 other people in your class are doing, and how to navigate that job search. And that's where I feel like SOM really prepares you not just for job 1, but for job 2, 3, and 4 down the line.
Right. Yeah. So one question I love asking admissions officers is, what is as we talk about professional specializations moving towards academic specializations, what is your, as I say, I love asking and stumble over my own question, but what should your school be known for academically that it isn't known for? What's a pocket of strength that you think, hey, I wish more people thought Yale and did word association with this area?
I got one. Yeah. Finance, for sure. I don't think people think of Yale as a finance school, but we have amazing faculty members, many of whom we recruited from a school out west, Midwest, I guess. And, my non-MBA work in admissions is around our master's in asset management program. We have huge strength in that area, not just due to the extraordinary faculty that we have doing cutting edge research in the space, but just to our industry connections as well. And we have a connection to our Yale investments office, which literally created the model for endowment management that most nonprofits and schools utilize to this day. We have expertise in machine learning and behavioral finance. And I think it's sometimes not what we're known for necessarily, but it's like a hidden gem within the school, how deep that program is. I don't know if other things come to mind for you.
I could probably rattle off a half dozen other things. One thing that other area I would point out is marketing. I think that's an area where we have some of the top faculty, and it's really an incredibly strong department, but it's not something we're normally thought of as a school you go to for.
The Yale Center for Customer Insights.
Yeah, I think that's one of the signature experiences a lot of students have who are interested in this area. YCCI, as we call it, they have what they call their discovery projects, and companies will partner with faculty on sort of live projects, live consulting projects, and then faculty will bring in students to work on them with them, and they're actually doing work for companies, for Google, for sort of P&G, for any number of other companies, and you get real world experience doing this. And I think it's often been. I think you did the inaugural one when you were a student.
I was the OG. Yeah. It wasn't called anything at the time. It was like, hey, Ravi Dar, can I do a project with you?
And so we're talking about what are there any other gems you guys want to talk about? We got marketing, we got finance.
I want to mention entrepreneurship.
I was going to mention too as the
not
third.
Because we have an enormous number of entrepreneurs coming through the program, though I wish we did, because I think we have the great infrastructure for it. But that's an area that I think over the last decade the school's really invested a lot in. We have our the leader of the faculty leader of the entrepreneurship program, Kyle Jensen, who is a successful entrepreneur himself and then has gone on to teaching. He's really put together a very robust array of coursework that ranges everything from I want to start a business while I'm at SOM and get this off the ground, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is more like I want to bring more entrepreneurial thinking to my classic day job, post-MBA. So all of that is in place. We have really sort of innovative ways of connecting across the university. So we have our Sci Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale. Sci-City is the acronym. And that's like the entrepreneurial hub for the entire university. So Kyle likes to say, you never want to start a business with 5 MBAs. You need, someone who's doing the business end of things. You need an engineer or a designer or, a lawyer, whatever it might be that you have to kind of put together to get something off the ground. And Yale has all those things. They're just in different pockets of the university. So this serves as a hub for bringing people together and gives them mentorship and thoughts on how to raise capital and things like that. So I think that's sort of like another hidden gem of SOM.
Yeah, no, that's the one I would have pointed out as well. And Kyle's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
He's helped us with our application. Actually, we've gotten better at evaluating entrepreneurial experience through. We've partnered with him to figure out what questions to ask entrepreneurs and get good answers to understand sort of the scale and scope of someone's venture experience.
Right. So in terms of educational model, we're talking about like niches and specific aspects that are hidden gems. But what are we like? What's the headline for the Yale SOM to a new applicant in terms of what it offers academically?
Yeah, I would point to the integrated curriculum and the way we teach the core and the way we teach you to think. I think that's really the thing that has the most durability. Just to make sure people understand, so the way we teach the integrated curriculum is by stakeholder perspective. So instead of teaching by functionally discrete silos, teaching finance or marketing, we teach by stakeholder perspective. So we would teach by the customer or the competitor or the state and society is one of them. And I think what this does, it allows our students enables our students to think more broadly and to make connections across disciplines. And we found that that's actually kind of the superpower for our graduates. We hear, our career development office, not surprisingly, regularly surveys employers on how students are doing, what the outcomes were. And we hear clearly, and consistently hear, especially from consulting firms where this is kind of what you're doing, that the firms always want SOM graduates on their teams because SOM graduates are the ones who can see the big picture, who can piece things together and kind of break down those kind of different sort of discrete silos and kind of and pull together lots of information and kind of synthesize things in a way that other team members can't. So I think that integrated curriculum leads to really good outcomes, and both immediately afterwards, especially in consulting, but farther, throughout our graduates' careers, as we found.
In more immediate terms, I think it really helps in a summer internship because, your typical MBA summer internship, you're thrown this big, messy problem that no one has time to do in their day job, right? And it usually doesn't have a clear pathway to finding an answer. It's kind of like a raw case in a way. And I remember from my time in the career development office getting that feedback from employers that like, wow, these SOM students really know how to hit the ground running on day one and they know who to speak to and what questions to ask. And, that's your opportunity to demonstrate yourself in a really short amount of time for potentially a full-time opportunity. But I think you're set up, again, to kind of tackle these big unstructured problems through the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. This has been great, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I think applicants are going to benefit immensely from this. They're going to learn a great deal about the school. I love talking about the hidden gems because I think so often schools get stereotyped, and it's really wonderful to hear about the spikes that applicants don't think about immediately. So thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
If you want to be one of our success stories, sign up for a free consultation with a member of our full-time MBA admissions team. Since we've worked with tens of thousands of applicants over the past 2 decades, we can give you our honest opinion on your chances and help you put together your very best application. That is not a sales call, but rather your first session with one of us for free. We can give you a profile evaluation, answer specific questions about the process, review your resume, talk about your school choices, and so much more. Sign up at mbaMission.com/consult. We look forward to working with you.